Hello, everybody, and welcome to Cana and Mike's Movie Night. I'm Mike. I'll be joined by my wife, Cana, here in just a few minutes. Of course, this is one of our special presentation episodes here on Electric City Sentai Denzicaster, and this go-round, we've caught our audible. That was Pride and Prejudice and Zombies, and anyway. This go-round, we are back to our regularly scheduled podcast, video cast in this case, where we're taking a look at The Fantastic Four. Now, specifically, this is the 2005 iteration of The Fantastic Four, starring Ewan Grufford, Jessica Alba, Michael Chiklis, and Chris Evans, for the people who seem to forget that long before he was ever Captain America, he was the Human Torch. So this is the first of the two Fantastic Four movies that were produced by 20th Century Fox in the early 2000s. And only the second time the Fantastic Four ever came to the silver screen. The first one was the Roger Corman directed, extremely low budget, and paid off to make sure that it would never appear in public edition of the Fantastic Four, which has randomly ended up on YouTube. Kind of like us. So, considering that movie wasn't so much released as it escaped, we're going to see if the same actually holds true of this version of the Fantastic Four, which was a big deal when it came out. I mean, back when this feature film came out in 2005 and 2006, there frankly weren't a whole lot of superhero movies yet, especially the Marvel characters. You had Daredevil and X-Men and things like that, and Spider-Man, but the big Marvel Cinematic Universe hadn't hit yet. So this was a really big deal when it came out, and we're going to see how well does ye old Fantastic Four hold up. So, me and the wife, we're going to go sit down, check out the Fantastic Four. Of course, always on the lookout for those Stan Lee cameos. And when we come back, we'll have our thoughts on the 2005 Fantastic Four. Stick around. All right, everybody, welcome back. It is another Cana and Mike's Movie Night here on Denzicaster. And as promised, after our aforementioned miserable audible last time that was Pride and Prejudice and Zombies. Yeah, that. We are back to our regularly scheduled programming, which means it is time for the 2005 edition of The Fantastic Four. Now, this movie stars Ewan Grufford, who is of, I know him of being from the Horatio Hornblower movies that were on A&E.
I know him from the King Arthur movie where he plays Lancelot.
There you go. Jessica Alba, who at 2005 was one of the most well-known actresses on the planet.
For acting.
Yeah, actually. You have Michael Chiklis, who was a big draw at the time, was The Shield. And then you have Chris Evans, whose big draw was pretty much nothing that I know of. His big draw came later. So, this version of the Fantastic Four, there are a number of differences between this and the comic books. We're not going to go through all of them because, frankly, I'm not overly well-versed on the Fantastic Four comic books. But not the least of which, pretty sure that Victor Von Doom had nothing to do with their origin story, and equally sure that he's supposed to be a dictator from Latveria and not a corporate executive and mogul.
Isn't that the same thing? Dictator, no. Corporate mogul, I mean...
Well, I mean, if you ask Donald Trump, but...
yeah, we're not going political.
For what it's worth out there, those of you in TV land who are wondering, because I've made a couple of Donald Trump cracks on some of our various shows lately, folks, it's because, frankly, it's easy for a cheap laugh. If I were going to vote for anyone at this point, I think I would probably vote for Chuck Norris. He cannot possibly do a worse job than everybody else that's nominated. So, anywho, Fantastic Four. This movie was made in 2005. A brief backstory on this movie, which I don't know if you know or not, but I've probably nerded off about it at some point or another.
Probably.
This movie was optioned years before it ever came out, and the option damn near ran out at one point. It got to a point that Marvel Comics was going to get the rights back to Fantastic Four if a movie were not actively in production. The result of that is a movie that was never released but managed to escape, called The Fantastic Four, which was directed by Roger Corman, the probably most world-renowned cheap movie director producer of all time. I think he actually has well over 100 movies to his credit, either as an actor, director, producer, on next to no money. And it showed with the original version of the Fantastic Four that was produced. In fact, that movie was so low budget and such that executives at Marvel paid him to not release it. So that movie never got a theatrical release. They were actually paid off to never let that movie see the light of day. If you'd like to see it, search for it here on YouTube. If you'd like us to see it, let us know in the comments.
No.
So there's that morbid part of me that actually does want to see that movie.
No.
But we could rip it to shreds.
We rip enough shit to shreds. And let's be honest, you're going to make me sit through Gamera.
Which isn't that bad a movie. Although, you know what I just figured out? This is the 4th Cana Mike movie night, and we're doing the Fantastic Four. We didn't plan that, folks.
No.
So, anywho, eventually, and this is actually the same producer at the end of the day, and I'm trying to find his name on here. If I weren't trying to find it, I'd know what it was. But anyway.
It's okay.
They actually did manage to get a big budget production produced. Like I said, it was the same producer at the end of the day. And this version here, I must say, I remember being back in 2005 when this came out. I mean, we think about it, it's, to someone like us, that doesn't seem like overly long ago.
I was in college.
Hush. I'm not much older, folks. 3 years. There's Roger Corman at the door. But no, instead, this movie came out in 2005. There really weren't, I mean, this is 11 years ago. There were not a lot of superhero movies, especially from Marvel, coming out around that time.
No.
You had the X-Men movies. I think Daredevil probably came out around this time. You had the Spider-Man stuff is around that time. But the actual Marvel Cinematic Universe has not hit yet.
Right. You weren't having at least one Marvel movie per season.
Yeah, I mean, at this point...
It was one a summer, maybe.
Yeah. And
give or take.
Or if you did get multiples, they were all different universes. They didn't have this shared story between them like the Marvel Cinematic Universe has today, or even, I guess, to a lesser extent, I guess the X-Men Cinematic Universe has between all of their movies over the years. So when this came out, it really was a big deal, and you wind up with it being a big deal in not only in part because it was a superhero movie, but I think because of who was in it. Because if I think of a Marvel superhero movie with not star power, but stage power.
Right.
And what I mean by that being just the sheer quality of the actors in the lead roles. I really don't know how much stuff on its freshman effort measures up to Fantastic Four.
No, I mean, I really, truly enjoy this movie. I mean, personally, I don't think Jessica Alba's that great of an actress, but she's got good boobs. So, you know, that helped with the outfit.
Well, think about it like this. We're back in 2005. Who are the alternatives that could act? If you're having to think this long,
I say we should have used Dame Judi Dench. You want someone who can act?
Yes, but they also want someone that's going to look good in the suit.
I don't know. Well, then what about Helen Mirren? She could have pulled off that suit.
Anyway, folks. No, I truly think if you go back and you look at those movies, I mean, the X-Men,
Probably all the actresses that could have filled that part were in X-Men.
Were in X-Men. I mean, realistically, though, if you look at X-Men, for sheer acting power out of the gate, you have Patrick Stewart, you have Ian McKellen.
Right.
And
which you can't really go wrong with those two.
And you have no one else that anybody knows who they are.
No, I know who Hugh Jackman was.
I had never heard of him before X-Men.
Well, see, as a girl, I'd heard.
I was about to say as a musical fan because I knew he did
actually
musicals,
he is very musical, but actually I knew him before X-Men, and well, X-Men came out when I was in high school, I think.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. I knew him from Kate and Leopold, which was a romantic time travel comedy. You know me in time travel. I love it.
Right.
Which also, funny thing is, that has what's his face who.
I love him in that movie.
No, shush. The Schneider. He played Sabretooth in the origin Wolverine story.
Okay. I know. I can picture his face, but I don't know.
He was the evil general in the Fifth Wave.
Comments on postcard, folks. I don't know. But no, I know who you're talking about. Liev Schreiber or something like that.
Yes, there we go.
Okay.
Liev Schreiber. Okay, so, I mean, which I now find funny because that's spoilers. Anyways, but no, I had heard of Hugh Jackman prior to the X-Men movies because he did a lot of romantic comedies. And also, funny thing is, he also had a lot of interviews prior to that because everybody was fascinated about his crime drama that he did in Australia, which is where he met his wife.
Okay.
You know, that kind of thing. So, I mean, I was more into the BBC and things from Australia than you.
If you stop and think about it, though, I mean, if you looked at X-Men, you had, I guess, arguably Hugh Jackman, but you had Ian McKellen, you had Patrick Stewart, you had Halle Berry, and Rebecca Romaine Stamos, and then several people that not most anyone had heard of prior to that movie.
But most of them got their big shots because of that movie.
Right. You look at Spider-Man, you had Tobey Maguire, who was a name before Spider-Man.
Right.
And then you had Sam Raimi's usual cast of characters show up after that. So you had, some of those guys. Well, but you did have
Kirsten Dunst was very well known too. I mean, she was the little 11-year-old girl who got to kiss Brad Pitt.
But just again, to my mind, just for quality of actors, which I've never thought Kirsten Dunst was a tremendous actress.
No.
But you had.
But she can scream well.
Well, the best thing about the Spider-Man movies was Tobey Maguire was a very good Peter Parker.
He sucked as Spider-Man.
Miserable Spider-Man. But he was a wonderful Peter Parker.
I think we're chasing rabbits right now.
We are. But then you had Willem Dafoe. And that hit that. But this is one where literally every person on the front of this, except for Chris Evans, whom I had done stuff before this, I just never saw it, had good acting pedigree. Of course you had.
He did a lot of romantic comedies.
I'm sure he did. He kind of has that look in this picture.
Yes, because he's so cute. And his arms get better as he gets older. His arms.
Yes, well, I blame that on the super soldier serum. So,
that's right. Thank God for that.
So the basic start off to the movie is very much the Fantastic Four origin story, where they wind up going into space to do research, get caught by a bunch of cosmic rays that change their molecular makeup, and they begin to manifest their various powers. So you wind up with Reed Richards, played by Ewan Grufford, who can stretch and can track what have you, his body to various proportions. You have Jessica Alba as Susan Storm, the Invisible Woman, though I did like there was a slight reference to calling her the Invisible Girl in one scene where it's Johnny Storm, her brother, talking about her, because that in the comic books was the character's original superhero name, the Invisible Girl. Human Torch, Johnny Storm, played by Chris Evans, and then Michael Chiklis playing The Thing, who, for the record, is a completely practical effect, unlike other incarnations of The Thing that may or may not have appeared in the last couple of years.
You're not subtle about that.
No, not even remotely. The new Fantastic Four, The Thing costume look, it's not even a costume, it's a CGI effect, it's kind of terrible in a lot of ways. So
we will rip that one apart later. Yeah.
Specifically when we start talking about some of the effects in this movie. But I do like the plot. One of the things I've always said about superhero movies is you have to assume going in that nobody knows who these people are.
Right.
Because most of your audience may not. You're going to have a lot of the geeks and nerds there who've heard of the Fantastic Four, read the comic books, watched the cartoons, whatever.
I remember watching the cartoons as a kid.
Right.
So, I mean, that was my only basis when I originally saw the Fantastic Four. Right.
But
my mom had a great nap while I enjoyed watching that movie in the theaters.
But the flip side is you have to introduce these characters and so on. I will say this. I feel to a point that when you walk into this movie, it's a plus and a minus to me. you get the feel that this is an established, living, breathing world. That there are relationships that existed before this movie starts and relationships that will exist after this movie ends.
Yes.
I like that. What I don't like, admittedly, is that some of those relationships make you feel like you missed something. Like, there is a relationship between Doom and Reed Richards that predates the movie.
Right, and you have no background for it. You don't understand why there's a struggle. All you know is that...
Doom has this complex about wanting to get the better of Reed.
Right, he wants to be the better man. He wants to have the best ideas. He wants to make the most money.
And he's got the girl. That we get that Reed and Sue at some point were an item, and they're not now.
But that area is a little bit fuzzy too.
Yeah.
You know, this movie would have benefited a little bit from an actual, for lack of a better term, prelude before the full credit sequence starts at the beginning of the movie.
Right.
You know, if they could have done, you know, a nice little flashback or something like that to kind of give us a basis for some of these things, because a lot of these things would have been better if we had had a little bit of more foreknowledge. Or
even if you establish, maybe if the first time Reed and Sue meet is the beginning of the movie. That's the only thing I will give the new Fantastic Four movie. The only relationships that are established before the movie starts are, we know that Johnny and Sue are siblings, although in the new version adopted siblings, and then you have Reed and Ben who are friends before this ever happens.
Right.
And we get to see part of that friendship develop. So that's, if you're wondering, folks, that's the one thing the new Fantastic Four might have done better. But it is to the credit of the actors. The acting is what I love the most about the movie. It's to the credit of these actors that you can buy the history that you didn't see.
Yes. They do have a good chemistry on screen. You know, I can believe that, you know, Richards and Susan, you know, were an item at one time and become an item again through their struggles of learning how to, you know, be the new people that they've become. Gosh, I love Chickless in his Thing costume, though, because he does the best job in acting out of all of them. Because he has all this practical makeup on, and yet you can still see the emotion. You can still get it. While, gosh, the stupid new Fantastic Four with their little number symbol in the middle of their
Fen Forstick.
I have a hard time with that CGI thing because I cannot really get truly the emotions that you can get out of actually having a physical person.
So we'll talk about the effects now for a second.
Sorry.
No. The CGI in this movie is dodgy. I mean, flat out. It's for a major motion picture circa 2005. Now, granted, CG's come a long way even in 11 years. For a major motion picture, the CG is dodgy. I mean, it's
not bad.
No, it's not bad.
We've seen worse from that time frame.
Right. But when I say it's dodgy, some of the stretch effects for Mr. Fantastic, the one that immediately comes to mind is when he slides his hand under the door at one point in the movie when they're trying to get into Ben Grimm's room.
That was unnecessary.
It looked dodgy to me. There was a thing that was like, okay. It did not benefit from being on an HD TV. I don't remember how it looked on. I don't even remember if I saw this in movie theaters, but I don't remember.
I did.
I don't know what it would have looked like on the big screen. If I did, I don't remember it. Johnny Storm, the Human Torch. Again, it looked a little dodgy, but at least they kept him moving most of the time. If he was standing still, it looked off. It looked a little weird. But if he was moving, it was good. They've been doing cloaking devices for years in sci-fi movies, so at least they got
had one thing that they didn't have to start from scratch.
Yeah, so that's something that's been done forever and ever. But you really only had two options to do Thing, and that was either A, completely CG him, which they did in the newer movies, and they did something similar with the Hulk, where the Hulk was a completely CG entity in every incarnation. But
with the Hulk, it works better because with the Thing, it's more rock and unevenness, while the Hulk is actually a human face that's just blown out of average proportion.
From the standpoint of the actual visual effect, I would have to believe that the Thing is actually the easier effect because you don't have to make it look human.
Right, but if you cannot portray human emotions because the Thing is actually human, it defeats the purpose.
Well, I'm getting to that. The part with the Thing that I love in these Fantastic Four movies, and I'm lumping Rise of the Silver Surfer into this because it's the same team, same cast, same everything, even if it's not a great movie.
It wasn't that bad.
I don't think it was that bad either, but it had some moments. With this, what I admire, A, is the guts to make the Thing a practical costume. Because that could not be an easy decision. That could have gone one of two ways. It was either going to look really, really good, or it was going to look like Power Rangers. And while I am a huge fan of tokusatsu stuff, obviously, a major motion picture in 2005, if it looked like Goldar, they were going to have a problem. So, and that really is the two extremes. Either it looks really, really good, or
you see the zipper.
Or you see the zipper and it looks really, really bad. And this, if you step back and you look at it with a critical eye, you can sit there and go, my God, that costume looks fake. But if you sit back and you watch Michael Chiklis perform in the costume,
it's awesome.
Yeah, Thing is the most emotional character in the Fantastic Four. He is the most changed character on the team. And he carries that emotional anchor. He is the depth of sorrow, but then he's the happiest guy on the team at different points. And Michael Chiklis even gets the facials through that makeup, which
is not easy.
Yeah.
As someone who's done a lot of theater, and I've had to have a lot of practical applications on my face, it is difficult to truly portray emotions when you can't move part of your face because of what's on it.
Or in some cases, and I'm wondering if this was the case with Chiklis's, the opposite extreme, you may have to over-exaggerate the emotional movement to get the prosthetic to behave properly.
Right. But and in that case, there is always the risk of it becoming cheesy. Yeah. And he does a good job of it. And there was one or two moments where it kind of could almost be considered cheesy with overacting. But it worked for the situation. Yeah.
So let's talk about the dynamic and the feel of the team, because that's what the Fantastic Four is. It's a team and it's a family. If you've seen the Fantastic Four, you know anything about the Fantastic Four, it's the Fantastic Four's origin story. They fight Dr. Doom. We've seen this before. But with this film, one of the things I really enjoy is watching for want of better terms, the fun.
Yeah.
The Fantastic Four is supposed to be fun. There's something else the new movie screwed up. It's supposed to be fun. There's supposed to be some jokes.
More lighthearted.
Yeah.
And
it's Stan Lee.
Yeah.
This was his baby in a lot of ways, was the Fantastic Four when it was first created. And Stan Lee has that lighthearted, jovial nature to him. And that comes across in this movie from Reed Richards being the world's smartest idiot.
I do love that phrase.
To you have the moment where in order to get through a situation, Sue Storm has to strip on a bridge.
Right.
I mean, it's a gag. And then suddenly she comes back visible while she's down to her bra. Again, it's a gratuitous gag. But it's a gag. Johnny Storm flicking his fingers like a cigarette lighter, turning his thumb on and off. It's a gag.
Right.
But it's fun.
Or, imagine this. All over.
Yeah. So I really enjoyed that dynamic. What do you think of the villain? We've got, was it Julian McMahon, I think, as Victor Von Doom.
See, I've already seen him as a villain before in the TV show Charmed. He was a half demon, half human. So, I mean, he plays his villains the same way in everything, I think. So, really, for me, there was no change. He was good, but honestly, I think there could have been better actors that they could have chosen for Von Doom at that time.
Probably. I wish they'd have cast somebody a little older.
Yeah, I would have been happy with older. Them all being almost the same age range kind of threw me off because, I mean, I vaguely remember the cartoons now, but to me, the voice of Von Doom always sounded considerably older than everybody else.
Well, in the comic books, Doom and Reed are around the same age, but Reed is portrayed as much older too.
Right.
Whereas in this film,
they're all peers.
They're all peers, and the gray streaks in the hair are more due to the cosmic rays than they are his age, sort of thing. I would have preferred someone older, and it's just me, probably, and I know that. I really wish they would just do a Fantastic Four movie where Doctor Doom really is just the mad dictator, which they've never done, not in any version. They always make him somehow a scientist on some level to give him an immediate connection to Reed Richards. I would love to see a Fantastic Four movie, where he's not the first villain. In the comic books, he wasn't the first villain. The first villain was a character named the Mole Man, so you're going to have to do some work around that to kind of make that work.
Yeah, but I think the reason they keep picking him is because, really, ask anybody else, anybody with basic knowledge, so someone like me, another villain the Fantastic Four fought. I can't tell you one, honestly.
Well, here's the problem. There is another one. It was another one would be Galactus, but they screwed that one up in the sequel. Badly screw it up. But
point being, they're for the Fantastic Four. There aren't a lot of, for those of us who are not fans of this comic, there aren't a lot that are automatically known villains for them.
Well, I'll put it to you like this. Look at the Iron Man trilogy as a comparing point, okay?
Right.
Obadiah Stane, the Ironmonger, played by Jeff Bridges, is not a well-known Iron Man villain to the mass public.
But they had Jeff Bridges, so why the hell not?
Well, but then Mickey Rourke as Whiplash. Again, not a well-known villain. So you can take a not well-known villain and build him up to that.
Right, but Iron Man, in some ways, it's just more popular.
Well, than the Fantastic Four, I don't know about at the time. But here's the other thing. Iron Man has an iconic villain who they kind of neutered in the movies because it's the Mandarin. So,
yeah.
So, I mean, you don't have to necessarily have the iconic villain.
No, but I think the reason why they keep doing Von Doom is because it's just everybody knows Von Doom.
Well, here's a challenge. Not that anyone out there is listening that has anything to do with the movie business. There have been 4 Fantastic Four movies, if you count the Roger Corman one.
Which we really shouldn't.
There have been 4. Every damn one of them, the villain is Doctor Doom. All 4 of them.
Doctor Doom is a cool name.
Stop. Give us one without Doctor Doom. I don't care who you use. The Inhumans actually were linked to the Fantastic Four for a long time. That's not going to happen now, but you could have used them. You could bring in, Mole Man would require a lot of rework, but there are other characters you could bring in for that spot and make it work. So even if you brought in the Heralds of Galactus and did Galactus right and turned him into this massive destroyer, devourer of worlds. Anywho, music.
I love the soundtrack to this movie because it's got a nice blend of stuff.
I discovered something the other day by complete and utter accident. The soundtrack of this movie was so awesome, I bought it twice. I did not realize I had bought it twice. I have a copy here, and then I was visiting my mother and found another copy there. I have no idea, which means I bought it twice at the time. So,
hey,
there you go.
It's a good soundtrack. It's a good soundtrack. It is almost up there for me, soundtrack-wise, as with Guardians of the Galaxy. That one has a rocking awesome soundtrack.
It does. Although I would say this one's soundtrack very underrated because you don't have a lot of the well-known popular classic rock tunes in this one.
That's what's nice about it. You know, they pick some well-known and they pick some not so well-known songs,
Right.
and it's a nice blend.
Mm-hmm. So, the last thing we're going to bring up on this one, because I think it warrants being asked. Chris Evans, the Human Torch. He was the Human Torch long before he was Captain America. I want to know, and this is more of a question for you. This actually has very little to do with the movie, because I think we would agree that Chris Evans does a tremendous job as Johnny Storm. How weird is it at this point, having seen 5 outings of the Boy Scout, and then go back and watch him be this asshole named Johnny Storm?
See, I'm all about Captain America, and it
Sure.
I like my men to be able to have the manners of a man from the 40s, but but no, I mean, it is kind of hard, and I know you made fun of me when I said it, but oh my gosh, he looks like such a baby.
He really does. The physical transformation of Chris Evans over the last 11 years is actually something to behold.
It is amazing, and I mean, if I didn't know it, it would probably take me a few minutes to realize it was the same actor.
Yeah.
Because he does such a good job of differentiating one from the other, and I mean, along with the physical changes that were required to do Captain America.
If you actually want evidence of exactly the physical differences of Chris Evans 11 years ago to what he looks like now playing Cap, literally go back and watch the original Fantastic Four from 2005, because there's nothing to hide. He's in a spandex bodysuit.
Right.
And you can see...
There's no six-pack.
Yeah, he was he was lean.
But he was not muscular.
But he wasn't built. Whereas now he has a lot of definition and mass, comparatively speaking. And that physical transformation is just incredibly awesome. And just there are very few actors, especially when you get into superhero movies, that can play different superheroes.
From different ends of the spectrum.
Right, and actually play them differently. And the only other one that I can think of off the top of my head is Brendan Routh, who's now done it 3 times, because he was Superman in Superman Returns. Mm-hmm. Then he was Dylan Dog, which is a superhero in and of itself. Yeah, but it was proof that the guy could act. And then...
He could act as someone other than a replica of Christopher Reeves.
Yes. She said it, I didn't. But also having him as the Atom in the Arrow and Legends of Tomorrow and the Arrow television series. It's vastly different characters, all 3 of them, but he plays them all equally well. Whereas
some better than others.
Yeah, no, admittedly. I mean, he does a hell of a Chris Reeve. But the Fantastic Four, when you see Chris Evans go from Johnny Storm, and then you go watch the first Avenger, and now he's Captain America. I remember being very reluctant when Captain America came out because of these 2 movies, and then I saw him and was sold. And the one last thing I want to hit on, because I want to get your input on this. I know you are very much, crafty, clothy individual. Mm-hmm. The basic Fantastic Four costume is about as basic as you can get. It's a blue spandex bodysuit with a white collar, white gloves, white belt, white boots, and
actually, it's not white.
No. I'm talking about the comic books.
Oh yeah, the comic books.
And a big white circle with a 4 in it. When they originally appeared, replaced the white boots or the white gloves, white boots, and I think the white collar all with black. This movie, they go very much back to the older black accoutrement to the costume. What do you think of the superhero costumes in the Fantastic Four? This is another one of those you either get it really right or really wrong moments.
They're not bad. For me personally, because this is the way I think, I always, when I buy clothes, I think, how can I use something for a costume? These would not be bad. You could get the basic morph suits from Party City. Mm-hmm. And do a little bit of alterations, and you can do these. Yeah. So easy. So, I mean, I appreciate the simplicity. This is not like the new Fantastic Four where the suits are so covered in things that you would have a harder time replicating something. So if you wanted to cosplay or you had a costume party or something like that. I appreciate the simplicity of it.
I like them myself. I think it does harken back to the old Fantastic. Very unique. I like it a lot. Again, when you wreak a lot of havoc potentially when you take an iconic costume and you play with it. But they got it right. It looks unique to the movies, but it still looks good. So, our final thoughts on the Fantastic Four. Our rating scale here on movie night, for those of you who may not remember, cell phones up, not good. That means we were paying attention to other crap. Cell phone down, good. She, for some reason, gives halves. I don't know how you can keep half a cell phone up, but I've never asked her either.
I'll show you.
Oh, okay.
It's kind of like this.
So that's a half cell phone up.
That's a half cell phone up.
Okay. Who knew? So where does this one fall?
Because you're a boy.
So where does this one fall?
I would say cell phone down.
And I would agree. Why do you think this? Your final thoughts?
My final thoughts? Well, it's a good movie. It is a fun and happy movie. A lot of this more current and recent superhero movies, they're kind of starting to get dark and kind of depressing. And this is just a good, old-fashioned, fun superhero movie. Yes, there is threat and drama and action, but it's fun.
Yeah, and that to me is the key word. It is a fun movie. You have the threat. If you're coming into this movie wanting the big 20-minute final action scene from Avengers Age of Ultron, please watch something else. Because the big final fight scene in this movie might last 5 minutes.
I thought it was closer to 10.
Maybe. But I mean, it really isn't long, comparatively speaking. If you go back and you look at it after seeing some of the more recent stuff, it'll be one of those blinking you miss it moments. But
don't fast forward through it.
Yeah, really, don't. You will, but it's a fun movie. You get a good sense of the characters. You get a good story. Movies like the Fantastic Four, I would argue the Iron Man movies would be a modern equivalent. To me, good movies, so don't misconstrue what I'm fixing to say. It's a damn shame that the most happy, fun, modern superhero movie, as of this recording, Guardians of the Galaxy comes real freaking close to this. But it still gets grim, dark in places. Deadpool was the most fun superhero movie, and it had to go to some weird, wacky, Deadpoolish places to get there. So, but yes,
it was so worth it.
It was. So, if I recall correctly, it is my turn to pick our next movie.
No, you picked the Fantastic Four.
Yes, but you picked 2 in a row. And then you picked Pride and Prejudice and Zombies.
Damn.
I'm due. And for the record, as of the time we're recording this, I'll draw back the curtain here a little bit. It's the first week of July. Which means, I'm going to call an audible on my wife. She's expecting me to say Gamera. But I'm not going to, because this is the first week of July, and in 2 weeks, Star Trek Beyond will hit movie theaters. And so, what I think we're going to do, we're going to embark on a journey through the J.J. Abrams Star Trek movies.
Okay, good. We're not going to go through the originals. Thank you.
No. We're just going to do the 2.
So you get to call the next 2.
Yeah, I'm calling the next 2.
Then I'll call the next 2.
Well, no, because then we'll be even. We'll be up to 6. You've done 3 and I've done 3.
I will feel the need to call the next 2.
We'll discuss that later. But anyway, we're going to watch J.J. Abrams, the first 2009 Star Trek movie. In the J.J. Abrams run of Star Trek feature films. Which means after that we're going to be watching Into Dumbness. I'll just make sure...
What's it called?
Into Dumbness.
No.
And I'll just make sure
What's it called?
The would-be Wrath of Khan. I'm not going to make the mistake of watching Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan immediately before seeing Into Darkness this time. But we're gonna lead up to Star Trek Beyond. Obviously, by the time that you guys see this, Star Trek Beyond might be on Blu-ray, but we're going to watch them, and we are actually going to talk about Star Trek Beyond after we get out of the theater. That'll be sort of a special thing. I don't know if that will be in sequence with these episodes, or if we'll just throw it up early because it'll be timely. So, with that said, until next time when we journey into the final frontier, I'm Mike.
And I'm Cana.
And we'll see you next time on Electric City Sentai Denzicaster's Cana and Mike Movie Night.